for me, it's going to be a how-to thing. The viral thing's just not happening. So like, I don't care anymore. I want this to be instructional. I want to be able to show you and teach you guys everything I've learned over the years, because I have been lucky enough to be taught by some of the greats of my generation. And now I'm able to kind of put forth some of the information that I've learned. You know, like I have an obsessive personality. You know, I've only been carving 14 years. There's carvers who are much more accomplished, have been carving a lot longer, who are older, and they're better carvers who are younger. You know, that's great. But you know what? They don't have a YouTube page. And if they do, awesome. Go to their page and check out their information, because that's what this is about, giving you the right information to get carving. So we've got our saw, we've got our block of wood here. This is a 6x6. You don't need that much when you first start carving. You know, I like to have you know, felt pen handy, a big one. Normally I have it connected to my little thing that comes back and pulls it back in. Now, when I'm starting out my blocking idea, the one thing I can really say to you is there's many, many ways to carve. And this is the one really cool thing about carving is you can pretty much carve any way you want to nowadays. You know, if you want to be a freestyle artist who just wings it, you can do that. You want to be a hobby carver, you want to be a folk carver, you want to be a square bear carver, you want to be human form, you want to do crazy detail like Ryan Villiers, you want to do abstract amazing art like Sylvia from A Cut Above. You know, there's everything. Everyone can do everything. And what I encourage, like I've encouraged last time, is actually like look at carvers. Don't just look at me, watch these videos. Look at other carvers. Join the carvers pages on Facebook. Join groups. Message people. Make friends. You know, that's the one thing you're going to find is going to be the most helpful thing is, you know, getting to know your peers, learning more about the craft, and then, you know, coming up with your idea, finding your style, pulling from different people. That's the one thing I've done. That's one thing we're actually going to do with YouTube here after we're done this, after we're done this how-to carving for beginners. What I'm gonna do and what you guys are welcome to do when we do this, I'm gonna ask you, I'm gonna use that wheel and I am going to take quick carves from some of my favorite carvers from all over the world, or just people that you comment on. Like maybe it will be, but I want everyone to be completely different. So, you know, we're doing styles. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to copy their style. We're gonna take one of their carvings, we're gonna spin the wheel, and then whatever it lands on, whether it's, you know, Rob Bass from Australia, Kadama, Tako Hayashi, Jeff Samadowski, Jason Emmons, Mark Kolp, the late great Pete Ryan, you know, to an absolute beginner, you know, who else? Chainsaw, what the heck is his name? I don't know. There's so many different people, and there's awesome ones too. You know, we've got, and we're gonna do it also with like some of the great YouTubers out there right now, and some of the great social media TikTok dudes like Mike Jones, James Elliott, Chainsaw Jenna, Jordy. We're gonna do some stuff with Jordy, and I'm just gonna put all their names onto this wall, spin it, and then what it lands on, I'm gonna carve it. But then we're gonna talk about it, what and why and who. You know, another guy who would be really cool will be Jeff Moore. He did a cool review on my thing, but I really like Jeff's style. He has a furring style that he has been able to teach a lot of people. And I was able to watch him in Ontario one time, and very, very insightful, inspirational carver. So there's a lot of different guys. You know, Foltz, my mentor, he'll be on there. You know, there will be all kinds of people. We got lots of space. And what we're going to do is we're going to spin the wheel when we're going to carve. And that's coming up after this. Wop, 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 wop. Back to the absolute beginner guide to chainsaw carving. Welcome to my page, because I have ADD and I just go off on tangents. So we've got our right safety gear. I'm gonna put on my gear. We're gonna talk about blocking, and then we're gonna make some cuts. And I'm gonna show you, like, we talked about where to use the tip yesterday, how to do that, or last week, where, you know, like using the bar for certain different cuts. where you're gonna use your cuts, you know? Like, are you gonna cut here or is it better here? You know, like, are you using your tip? How you're gonna twist your wrist. We're gonna talk about the theory and the planning that goes into blocking. Now, and this is how I veered off, was that we have the ability to be any kind of carver you want. For me, in competition, I like templates. That's the way I was worked, and that's by using profile view videos. We've talked about them in a lot of my old videos. I talk about profile view, and quickly that means you look at this camera, you look here, and it is a perfect profile image. So whatever that is, you know, like if it's like this, it's easy to punch out. You can template it, follow the lines perfectly. When you start to change and move the body like that, that makes it a lot more complicated. So when you're first getting started, find yourself a nice profile image. Maybe a fish, maybe a eagle, like a profile of an eagle, perched eagle. Everybody always starts with that kind of stuff. A mushroom is a great idea. You know, we could do a cool mushroom here if we wanted to. You know, like skinny, you could do trees, you could do anything. But I think at the first little bit, you want to take it easy and you want to plan. So right off the hop, find your image and get it onto the log. Maybe cut your log flat. It doesn't have to be a 6x6. You can get a round log. You can get anything. I mean, if you look over here, I'm carving this Bigfoot right now and he is massive. And I'm just freestyling it. You know, you can see his chicken scratch drawing. My regret, I should have templated this one because I could have punched it out a lot faster. I got to attach the arm. I'm finding the legs. I'm digging. I'm spending more time doing this than I should. So that goes, time management goes into planning, especially in competitions. If you're ever thinking, you know, even though this is your first time, you want to go out and carve with people, I think that's a great thing to do. Chainsaw carving competitions, whether you're carving or not, at first is the best way to learn because you see guys like whoever's competing. You know, me, when I used to compete, now I'm mostly judging, might come back and do some comps. I think might go to England next year. But, you know, seeing carvers move fast is a very inspiring way to learn and to find a way to push yourself. So we're confident now. We started our saw in the last video. We got the right setup. We've got the 12-inch Canon dime tip with an Echo 501P or a 490 if you want the cheaper version. And let me see, I gotta get my GoPro here to light up. And we're running quarter pitch chain. We will do a video. How much gas we got? We got enough. Now, I don't know. Should we do a tree, a mushroom or something? Here's a little mushroom, you know, like we could do like a little toadstool mushroom. There's a little mushroom head, and there's like, it looks literally like a penis head. I don't know. I'm not good at doing mushrooms really. So let's see, I just do, there we go. There's a little better of a mushroom. Just a little button top. So we'll start over again. This is the thing about templating. It's much easier. There, so, you know, you can make it so it's maybe leaning, and there's the head, and I like to give everything a lean because, you know, if there's a line, people will, people like lines. That's something I always think about when I'm carving, you know, and that's something you should think about when you're just starting to carve, is make things, you know, smooth. Give them lines. I always look in S's. I think of everything in an S. You know, composition-wise, the golden spiral is my favorite. You Google the golden spiral, and then, you know, you can kind of like, it's not really here, but the focal point would be here, and then you're spinning it from up here, and that's, you know, what I'm doing is I'm trying to give it a little flow. You can make it very easy if you want, you know. It's whatever you want to do. For myself, I like to always kind of give myself a little bit of a challenge, and I think you should too. Like, don't be afraid to fail. It's just a 6x6 piece of wood. Who cares? You know, if you don't want to use that, just use some junk you got from the backyard, some old stumps, whatever it is. And if we want, in reality, we're just blocking today. So let's talk about that. What are we gonna do right away? We're gonna grab the saw. We're gonna start it up. And now I know where you can do one of two things. If you know that you already can commit to like some of the lines here that you know are gonna be gone, like here, let's say that's gone. You can come in from the top. Do a little line so you know that it's there. And then come across. Now when you're coming across in a block, you want to make sure that you are not going in too high, especially if you're coming from the inside. You want to make sure that you're kind of straight, because if you're in on an angle like this or like this, you see you pushing it in and the saw's going that way, that's not going to work. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to push in straight, you want it to be straight and try to keep it as straight as you can. And same with this bar, right? Like it's tapering slightly down. So when I'm pushing in, I kind of counterbalance, and you can see the chain right here. I always kind of counterbalance. So I'm imagining going where the tip is, which is a little lower, but where this chain is up here, so I can cut straight on through. And with the block out, I'm gonna come, I've got this line, now I'm gonna set it right about here. I'm not digging my dogs in, because if I dig my dogs in, see, you can see I did a little bit here, because it's just a higher up thing. But if you dig your dogs in and that's part of your carving, you know, it's gonna leave a mark. You're gonna have to push it in to get those out. So I'm kind of cutting right in that middle part. Now, moving on to the other side, I'm gonna switch the way I'm holding my saw. I put a lot of my weight on this arm, that's why I get tennis elbow a lot, but then I'm balancing here. So like I've seen carvers hold it like this, where they keep it here, they keep it like this. You know, you have to find just the way you are by practicing, and like we were talking about yesterday, making those cuts, right? So you want to make the right cuts, you got to get to know your saw. You're going to be leaning on the teeth on this side, so you try to stay to the line that you're choosing. Now this is going to have a little turn, so I'm going to kind of I'm going to use that. I'm going to use just the front of it. And Pete Ryan told me when I was first on Carver Kings, no, on Saw Dogs, don't be afraid to do the same cut a few times, because a lot of the time, now that you've got this little cut, you think you can just make a big, like, raw swooping cut. You can, but you also don't need to. You know what I mean? Like, you can do it. How much time does it take to do? You got, what, 4 quick cuts? You've got a better, straighter angle. And now, you know, we're looking at it. This is pretty much straight line. Look at the thickness here. Look at the thickness there. Like, that's pretty darn good. You know what I mean? You've got a nice block out, because the blocking out is what you're doing. Don't start shaping yet. That's the one thing. Your brain is going to want to go, oh, I got to shape it. I'm going to start to do. You don't need to do that yet. Stay true to the block out. You know, the block out is Okay, so you can see as I'm shaping, I'm using this part of the teeth for cutting in. I'm just kind of, I'm familiarizing myself with the tip of my saw because that's your pencil. You can scrape with it, you can dig with it. Now, like I was talking about earlier, imagining going in straight, you can also come in this way because we're gonna do a cut here that's gonna be like an S, right? So you see that there's already this S shape connecting, and same here, it's kind of like a C shape that's coming out. You're gonna want to not just, it's gonna be harder to, unless you do those cuts like this, where you're using the tip, because as you're using the tip and you get deeper, the teeth are actually shaving back this part, and I'm gonna try to emphasize it so I'm cutting away the wasted part, which you could just do too. So I have the battery cut out. So all I'm doing there is cutting out the parts that I don't need. So when you're doing that, like this motion here, I'm switching my wrist. So my wrist is controlling it in the back. You know, I'm using this as my guide. This is my balance, and I'm letting the saw do the work. I'm not pushing in. You don't want to push deep in and bore in like you can. But when you punch through in the back like this, if you're not going fast enough, your saw is gonna get stuck. And when you're carving and you're pulling and it's such a pain in the ass to do it, or at a show, super embarrassing. Little trick to get through that is at the very end when you're pushing, I'm never going full throttle, but at the very last second, I'm gonna go higher revs, chain speed fast, so when it pushes through that log, it rips and keeps on cutting and actually continues the speed of the chain, which allows you to keep on going. Because that is major when you're, you know, boring through. But when you bore through, you run the risk of, you know, overcutting or being the wrong length. If you take your time and you kind of just shape this out, you know, I'm now imagining where the chain is going here. I know the tip is going this way out, but I'm now, because I realize if I cut in too much and I push up, if I push up, this thing is going to cut into the stem. So now I start to imagine it got stuck there is because I didn't do this. You can see that cut right there. This is a perfect example of taking your time to, you take your time to do the cuts. You don't get this chunk here where you got to dig. So now I'm going to have to shave that down. Which is no big deal, but by doing those extra little cuts with your tip there, you kind of set the tone to where you're going to be able to bend and smooth and block. So now we've got the shape of the mushroom, you know? It's just a little toadstool. It'll be cool, you know, very easy. Well, now we go, okay, well, the mushroom's got, it's going to be in the center. So now you can go to this side, spin it around if you want. You don't have to. I'm just doing this because I don't want to move the camera. But now I can go, okay, I've got this here. This can be gone. This can be gone. You can draw this if you wanted. You know, you've got, whatever, the pen's on the ground. You want to draw it out, cool. You know that this line right here is where this is going to be. So I normally will do it from this side just because I know that that's where I want. Now, if you really want to get tech with it, and you're nervous, a good little tip is set your depth, you know? You're like, okay, this is, you know, let's say that's an inch. I will write on my bars, because it's all gonna come off anyways in like 10 minutes. But if I'm trying to balance them out, I'll set my depth here, you know, cool. All right, this one's there. Could have done another ½ an inch. So now I go to this side. Now I've got 2 balanced sides, and I'm just gonna So, one thing about a toadstool and a mushroom, as we kind of come to the end of this video for blocking, because we've now pretty much blocked out the mushroom, you know what I mean? Like, it's not perfect. I would shape this out a little. I'd cut this back, you know, like, we'll get to that actually. How about we just get to that in the next video? Why not, right? Because that's what we're doing here. We're just blocking. So, one thing to think about when you're doing this, make sure before you take this mushroom out that you have enough wood still that you can't just knock that off. Because there will be, if you go too thin and then you want to go and start carving up here still, there won't be enough meat. So make sure that you've got that meat, which is, you know, for this 6x6, I would say almost size of my pinky, like 2 inches, 2.5 inches. Maybe almost 2 inches across, all the way through, and then there's about the same on this side too. So there's enough stability to be able to shape off, because when we get up into detailing this, we're gonna make that little mushroom like kind of a toadstool-y kind of thing. And this is kind of carving where you're just kind of freestyling, you go for it. You know, you could pull up, you know, psilocybin mushrooms if you wanted, and look at this is kind of like one of those Liberty caps or whatever those caps are called. But this will end up being something like that. In my brain, I keep thinking about Mario. So it'll be something like that, except Mario ones are fatter on the bottom. They kind of plump out, but you know, it's like a little toadstool. So recapping what we just talked about, when you're blocking out, take your time, but be true to your lines, you know, and try to imagine where your bar is when you're in the wood. That's the one thing. You want to kind of get to know what your chain is doing on the inside of the log throughout the whole time. You know, like, it's not just hacking and making it like crazy. You're really trying to figure out what the best way to make your cuts straight through. You know, get a good profile view and try to imagine as you're cutting where this part of the bar is. Because inside of the log, if you don't want bad overcuts, and overcuts are when you see like, you know, a log like this, even though this has nothing to do with it, but this is like an overcut. So, you know, instead of getting these like weird cuts like this, you make sure you do it right the first time, and then you won't have overcuts. You won't have to go fix them. You won't cut too much of this top part out in the middle here and lose what you're trying to accomplish right before you start, because your blocking is one of your most important parts. You're trying to get the block out, punch out before you start to going into your detailing. Now, this is just my process, like this, and this is what I think is an easier way to approach blocking before going into shaping and going crazy and trying to detail as soon as you do it. You can do that. There's carvers that do that when they carve people. They do the faces and the heads first. Then that helps them dictate the body, which I'm going to do with Harry and the Henderson. So that does work. Nothing is wrong. Remember that. And just try to find what's going to work for you. And hopefully these tips are going to help you in accomplishing your first carving. Because that, I think, is what's the most fun part about it, is really just trying it. You know, if it's not a mushroom you're into, then try something different, but use that same concept. You've got the bar, you've got the right saw. If you don't have a saw, if you don't have a carving bar and you're using a tip that has a sprocket on it, just remember this part is going to jump. And when you're sticking that part in there, if that saw gets up to the top part, it's going to jump. The thing about a carving bar is that it will never jump. There's no kickback because there's no sprocket to stop it. You know, if it goes too fast, the chain just stops dead. So that's the one thing about having one of these bars. And then just get to know your saw, your chain, make a bunch of cuts, you know? Try different things. If you don't want to do a mushroom right away, just get the log and just, you know, just cut it. You know, you got a piece of wood, you don't have a jaw horse, just get around, stick some nails in it. Remember, use some spray paint. Use some spray paint to know where your nails are, because that's the one thing I always remember. And still to this day, I still hit this stupid jaw horse, but I always will do it. So I'll just try to like remember going, okay, let's try stuff. Nothing's wrong. The only thing you're doing is you're figuring out what your bar is capable of, what your saw is capable of, and maybe you're gonna find some cool textures. You know, like you saw me go up there, which is using the chain to use this part to cut, and then it's a different texture than it is when it's pulling down. Same movement, same hand style, just changing my wrist ever so slightly or going up instead of down. You know, like that's a more rough cut because the chain is pulling. This is a more tighter cut because of the way the wood is and the way the grain is. So it's almost like carving and sanding. That's a mouthful and it's a little hard to explain or understand, but if you got that, good. And just remember, just try it, you know, like cutting out here. Feel what it's like to swoop out a big cut really fast or do a couple little cuts and see how sharp you can get it, right? There's nothing wrong with trying and just getting to know your saw and then blocking out and just blocking out forms. If you're doing bears, awesome. There's lots of videos with bears. We'll do some bears, we'll do some stuff, but really I want you to just focus on getting to know your bar, and when you're blocking out something, thinking about how the chain is moving and what you're doing with your saw to make those cuts and not do overcuts. You know, you want to think about where your bar is going. That's something that's going to be always good for your punch outs. You start thinking about what's happening on the inside of the log, not just what you're seeing. That's going to be the importance. Does your wrist feel straight as you push through? Like that's something that took me a really long time to really kind of and I haven't mastered it by any means necessary. I've got it down pretty fucking good, but you know, like there's guys who are epic at it, and you know, that's just something that comes with time. And if you start to think about these things now, when you're first getting GoPro can't handle the 30-minute talking video. I guess it's just too much. So where was I at the very end? It's just thinking about the cuts, thinking about what's going to work for you and how you go about making them, you know? So there's not big overcuts. I'd rather have an undercut like this than an overcut, you know, where it's up in here and and it's all the way through here, because that will happen. So just think about where your bar is. Think about the angle, you know, which direction. As you're pushing in, are you veering off to the right? Are you veering off to the left? No, you want to go straight in or straight down. Make sure you think about that when you're blocking. And other than that, this week, get out there, rock it, leave me some comments, leave me some ideas, and if there's questions, I'll try to get to them. And then also, we're going to move on next week into kind of more of a refining, shaping. We're going to shape it. We're going to shape this out. And then the following week, we're going to detail it. So get out there, carve 1 mushroom, carve 10 mushrooms. And if you get ahead of me and you're feeling confident, just go for it. There's YouTube videos that I've carved mushrooms on. And yeah, so thank you. Hopefully you're liking these videos. My name's Ryan Cook, sawvalley.com, Ryan Cook Carving. If you need bars, you can go to sawvalley.com, 12-inch dime tip bar. I got lots of them. Thanks to a couple people who ordered some this week. And yeah, this is what it's about. Having fun. Like I said, get out there, meet friends, make friends, learn. If there's new carvers, there's a brand new beginners chainsaw carving group that's out right now. I joined it. It's pretty cool. Like I'm a watcher. I don't like talking on Facebook, but yeah, that's something where you can get out there and you can learn and you can really kind of, you know, talk to your peers, talk to the people who are in that same hungry state of mind that you are in right now. So enjoy the ride, get covered in sawdust, let it rip, have some fun. All right, see you guys. See you next week. Later.